probably wondering, Elsif, what do you mean by apocalyptic mystery? A locked room case in a nuclear fallout shelter? Murder on the Snowpiercer Express? While I'd love to read those stories, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a certain approach to mystery writing as social critique. In order to explain, I have to get into the root of the word apocalypse. The word apocalypse comes from the Greek word apokalypsis, which means to uncover or to reveal. This is a far cry from today's meaning, mass destruction and societal collapse. How did that change happen? The answer can be traced back to the Book of Revelation, also known as the Apocalypse of John. Here, the word apocalypse wasn't referring to the events being described, but the vision that John witnessed. The apocalypse was the revelation. They were synonyms. As noted by Renegade Cut in his video, Left Behind in the Translation of God,
the English word derived from this, apocalypse, has come to mean the end of the world, but that is not what apocalypsis meant. It had a far more positive meaning that we have perverted into something dire.
The Book of Revelation is filled with interesting imagery. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, the Whore of Babylon, the seven-headed dragon dragging stars with its tail, a devastated earth with a sea of blood. It's no surprise that it's inspired countless works of art. In the Middle Ages, illustrated manuscripts of Revelation were a staple among monasteries. They're now collectively known as the English Apocalypse manuscripts. The imagery in these manuscripts stuck. I imagine that people eventually started calling harrowing events apocalyptic because they resembled the Book of Apocalypse. Eventually, people lost sight of the original meaning. The definition shifted from a vision to a vision of destruction to just destruction. Despite the shift in meaning, the original's influence can still be felt today. To once again cite Renegade Cut, modern biblical scholarship does not view Revelations as a literal prophecy. Instead, it's viewed as an allegory about then contemporary politics. The 7 cities referenced in the beginning of the book were actual places. One theory states that the beast is the Roman Empire, and the mark of the beast, 666, is coded gematria for the name Nero Caesar. In other words, it was an elaborate political cartoon. Most apocalyptic fiction still doubles as political commentary. It can be a literal representation of a modern problem, such as the use of nuclear weapons, fuel scarcity, or environmental degradation. Or it could be metaphorical. Dawn of the Dead uses zombies to critique consumerism. War of the Worlds critiques British imperialism by having Britain suffer under a technologically superior force. They use exaggerated stakes to highlight a failure of society. But it's not solely allegory. Modern apocalyptic fiction is just as much about the disaster as it is about the people going through it. Who descends into violence? Who provides aid? Who is paranoid? Who is trusting? It's about revealing the supposed true nature of people when society fails. Zombies separate good from evil just as much as God's judgment does. So in a broader thematic sense, an apocalyptic narrative is one where a grand tragedy exposes flaws in the world, testing people and revealing their inner character. With this definition in mind, the murder mystery is often apocalyptic. In order to illustrate what I mean, I need to discuss 2 roles, the detective and the culprit. The detective tends to be a lonely figure. They're often alienated from the people around them, whether it's because of their eccentricities, like Sherlock Holmes, or because they push others away, like Philip Marlowe. Even when the detectives have rich social lives, they tend to exist in the periphery, relegated to B-plot. Aside from a possible assistant, the Watson, they tend to go it alone, entering an unfamiliar setting with unfamiliar characters. This serves multiple purposes. First, it's a convenient excuse for exposition. All the characters introduce themselves, and the inner workings of the setting are explained. Second, it's a convenient excuse for hidden information. Everyone has secrets, and the outsider detective is, by default, out of the loop. Third, it prevents them from being a savior. The detective often arrives late, either after the plans to murder are already in motion, or after the victim is dead. Their job is to witness a tragedy, not to prevent it. If they did, then there wouldn't be a mystery. Even if they prevent future deaths by catching the killer before they act again, the damage is already done. The characters can't go back. The world as they know it has already ended. Next is the culprit. There are countless exceptions, but from my personal reading experience, the mystery genre tends to have a fondness for the culprit. They're often people backed against a wall, such as by debt or blackmail. They honestly believe they don't have a choice. Or they want justified vengeance for wrongdoings the world turned a blind eye to. When the culprit is written as unsympathetic, they're often abusing existing power structures, such as the spurned lover's sense of romantic entitlement, or a rich person afraid of losing their wealth. What drives a person to murder is never just their own personal morals, but a failure of the world surrounding them. Their roles are intertwined. The culprit ends the world, the detective reveals why it ended. Apocalypse, Revelation. I bring all this up because the games I want to cover today, The Return of the Obra Dinn and the Painscreek Killings, are both apocalyptic mysteries. They both task you with investigating dead worlds, settings once teeming with life, but left abandoned after a tragedy. The Return of the Obra Dinn takes place in 1807. In 1802, the titular Obra Dinn went on a trading voyage, carrying 60 people and 200 tons of cargo. It never reached its destination. 5 years later, the ship reappeared, drifting towards English shores, severely damaged and empty of cargo and crew. All that remained were corpses. You play as an insurance adjuster for the East India Company. You're sent to investigate the ship, tally the company's losses, and figure out what happened. The Painscreek Killings take place in the 1990s. The city of Painscreek was once a picturesque small town. It was most famous as a retirement and rehabilitation community, thanks to its renowned hospital, funded by the wealthy and philanthropic Roberts family. That all changed when the corpse of the family's mother, Vivian Roberts, was found on their front lawn. The population of Painscreek had already been dwindling. The old were staying while the young moved out. But this death broke the community at large. Everyone became willing to leave. By the time the game starts, most of the property will soon be auctioned off. You play as a journalist named Janet Kelly. One day before the auction, she's sent to investigate the town. She has one chance to find the truth before the remaining evidence is destroyed by real estate developers. Each protagonist has a very different style of investigation, and they're expressed through very different gameplay systems. Before heading out to sea, the protagonist of Obra Dinn receives a mysterious package from Morocco. The sender claims to be a survivor of the Obra Dinn. He planned to publish the truth, but his health deteriorated after finishing a basic outline. He asks you to fill in the rest. The package includes a half-empty notebook containing information on the ship and a mysterious pocket watch. The Memento Mortis. Remember death. The pocket watch enables the game's unique investigation mechanic. When you encounter a corpse, it allows you to witness the victim's moment of death. You hear a bit of audio leading up to the event, and then you're presented with a freeze frame, the moment where life ended. With this setup, the standard questions for a murder mystery are already solved. You see how each person died and who killed them. It seems like there's not much of a mystery, but there's a lingering question. Who are these people?
Wait a minute! Who are you?
Both the killer and the victim's identities are unknown. You have to use context clues to fill out a roster of everyone's fates. It's a more literal take on the term whodunit. Sometimes, a character will be directly referred to, by name or by role. Sometimes, you figure out a person's role by watching them perform their duties. If a person is climbing the rigging, you can reasonably assume they're a top man. Sometimes it can involve guessing nationality. If a person speaks a certain language, or speaks with a particularly distinctive accent, then you can tell they're one of the Russian or Chinese crew members. Some of the tells are extremely subtle, but I don't want to spoil any puzzle solutions. In the Painscreek Killings, Janet's toolset is nowhere near as fantastical. All she has is a digital camera and pockets large enough to carry the evidence she finds. This game structure is more reminiscent of actual investigative work. The majority of the game is exploration and evidence gathering. The residents of Painscreek were in a rush to leave, and they left plenty of ephemera lying around, such as old diaries, newspapers, photos, letters, that sort of thing. You're given free rein to explore the town, with no explicit guidance, and are left to piece together the events that led to murder. While the investigation is open, it's not completely freeform. Painscreek is a town that seems idyllic at a glance, but hides dark secrets behind locked doors. I mean that in both a figurative and literal sense. They may have forgotten to pack their furniture, but most remembered to lock their doors. Many of the game's puzzles consist of finding various keys for various locks.
Oh, and look, a key. Uh-oh, this needs a key. Well, fortunately, I need another key, but I only have one key. Alright, now... Oh, wall is keys, see? That's the puzzle. Oh, behind here. There's another goddamn key! This is the only puzzle this dude can think of with more keys. What the? Now, I got another key. I need another key to open it before I got like 1,000 keys.
Holding the finger.
See? And look
you
at
don't
that.
have the gloves anymore.
Another key. I think this game has just started and I've gone through 8 keys.
So your character's just slowly spinning in a circle in this room, right?
Yes!
Oh, gears.
John McCain, why?
It's not as simple as it sounds. The game will give you a key to someone's house, but it won't tell you their address. You have to find that info elsewhere. You come across several combination locks, but the solution is rarely directly spelled out. More often it's a birthday or other special number, which you have to look up. Some of the locks and keys can be pretty abstract, such as using a shovel to find a buried time capsule. Despite the simple structure, it still requires plenty of deductive reasoning. Both investigation systems share a common factor. They both use cross-referencing to explore relationships and chains of events. The Painscreek Killings uses its locks and keys to explore character relationships. Someone will leave a spare key with a friend. Young lovers will have a password for their secret meeting spot. Tools will be lent between neighbors. Employers will trust employees with access to their property. Multiple people know where to find the church's spare key because it was a centerpiece for community organizing. No one in Painscreek was an island, both in times of trust and in times of tragedy. At the start, you're only tasked with solving Vivian Roberts' murder. But as you investigate, you realize that she was only one in a series of deaths. Hers was just the most publicized. You can't understand her death without understanding what happened before and after. Everyone witnessed some of the events, but no one had the full picture. No one understood until it was too late. It's only by cross-referencing everyone's fragmented accounts that the full picture comes to light. The Return of the Obra Dinn has a similar focus on cross-referencing. You're asked to identify a person when you witness their death, but the necessary information will rarely be in that scene. The first scene readily identifies the captain, but features said captain murdering someone else. A few scenes later, we see the captain confess to his wife that he shot her brother. You can work out the rest from there. A later scene has a man bleeding out, and his last words are,
"Tell Pete's mother I tried my best.
Aye.
To pull him back, to save him."
This tells you nothing about who he is, but if you see him fail to save someone in a different death scene, you have something to work with. Once again, no one exists individually. Everyone exists in relation to someone else. Obra Dinn has a unique way of presenting chains of events. As stated earlier, if you find a corpse, you're transported to the moment of their death. If there's another corpse in that moment, then you're sent to a previous moment of death. You're given flashbacks within flashbacks, watching one death lead to another. When you find a corpse that only exists in flashback, the magic pocket watch will materialize it on the ship in the present day. It's honestly unnerving. You start the game exploring a mostly empty ship, and watch it fill with bodies as you get closer to the truth. Both these games tell their events out of order and ask you to line them up, searching for the first domino. But before I talk about said domino, I want to talk about each game's art direction. You can easily tell the games apart at a glance. Their two art styles are very different, and they serve very different purposes. Obra Dinn's faux 1-bit art style is designed to create a sense of distance. It evokes long outdated computers to aid a sense of historical distance. The sketch-like presentation makes the frozen scenes feel more natural. The abstract monochrome look makes the more gruesome or outlandish scenes digestible. It also directs player attention. Faces and clothes are always important, so they're always rendered in detail. The books on a shelf probably won't tell us much, so those are rendered as blank. The Painscreek Killings art style aims for the opposite effect. It's a realist style, aiming to create a convincing place. It's set in the past, but it's not trying to evoke historical distance. I'm guessing it's set in the 90s for narrative convenience, like fewer cell phones. It doesn't have the gruesome on-screen deaths of Obra Dinn, but the implications of violence are more impactful. The uniform level of detail refuses to direct player attention. The tutorial starts with you locked out of town. You explore the sheriff's office by the entrance, looking for the key to the gate. You'll find a newspaper, a diary, a map, and some other info to get your investigation started. The key you need is in a locked drawer. The key to that drawer was dropped under the desk. It's small and easy to miss.
Oh, it needs a key.
Oh, perhaps.
The key. Hey, great!
Characters like...
Come on! That's just busy work.
While the game rarely devolves into pixel hunts, the message this moment sends is clear. Pay attention. Be thorough. Go over every detail. Everything is important. That's the tonal difference between these two games in a nutshell. The Painscreek Killings wants you to form an emotional connection with Painscreek and the people who live there. It asks you to dig deep and rewards you with details about how everyone lived before everything fell apart. Events and details unrelated to the murders are given weight. The Return of the Obra Dinn only tells you how everyone died. You meet characters as a corpse first, and as a person second. The few times you see people acting casually, eating a meal or enjoying each other's company, it's because someone's life is getting snuffed out right off screen. It has neither the time nor the patience for your sentimentality. Despite these wildly different approaches and outlooks, there's a visual motif that ties them both together: the freeze frame. How Obra Dinn uses the freeze frame is obvious. You spend the entire game investigating dioramas of death. In between those scenes, you're exploring an empty ship completely devoid of movement. The Painscreek Killings' use of the freeze frame is a lot more subtle. I mentioned this earlier, but it's still kind of weird that the citizens of Painscreek left so much behind while leaving town. Some may consider it a plot hole, but it adds to the theme and the tone of the game. It still looks like a place you can live in, a place that people should be living in. The cafe is still advertising the next special. The farmer's market is still waiting for the next sale. The church is still set up for the next mass. The hospital is still stocked and ready for patients. It starts as eerie and ends as sad. The tomorrow the town is waiting for will never come, just as the Obra Dinn's crew will never return. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change form. The number of atoms in the universe is set in stone. When taken literally, the term end of the world makes no sense. Whatever happens, the world moves on. Some lives adapt, some don't, and the number of atoms in the universe remains unchanged. But the universe itself has an end. Heat death. When thermodynamics reach equilibrium. When there's no more of the temperature differences required for atomic and chemical action. Nothing was destroyed. Nothing was created. The number of atoms in the universe is still the same, but they're all frozen. Nothing able to change. That is the apocalypse. It's not that the world ends, it's that the world cannot continue. Even the positive apocalypse of Revelations ends in stasis, an eternal heaven on earth without suffering or death. Each game is about exploring this stasis, searching for what brought each setting to a screeching halt. If it isn't obvious by now, I loved both of these games. I wholeheartedly recommend them. Because they're mysteries, I recommend going in knowing as little as possible, but I can't get into the thematic meat without describing some important plot points. I've reduced them down as much as possible. You'll still have plenty to solve, but I still think you're best going in blind. If you're interested, this is your off-ramp. End the video now, or skip to the conclusion at this timestamp. There will be a spoiler warning on the corner of the screen until then. Befitting the mystery genre, both games have culprits, people who committed serious wrongdoing. But neither game has a mastermind, someone with an overarching plan that deliberately set everything into motion. It's more chaotic than that. No one wanted mass death. It's just that, after an initial crime, things spiraled out of control. In The Return of the Obra Dinn, the initial crime was a robbery. The royal family of Formosa, today known as Taiwan, were using the Obra Dinn to transport a treasure. A small group decided to steal it and flee the ship. They didn't know that the treasure was supernatural and was being guarded for everyone's safety. The results are... not good. The Formosans all die before they can explain what's happening, and everyone else is left to chaos. Considering that the game takes place on an East India Company vessel, it's fitting that the crew's doom came from stealing the wealth of other nations. The Painscreek Killings started with an affair. In the town of Painscreek, everything ties back to the Roberts family. They're pillars of the community, but that pillar isn't as stable as it appears. Early on, you learn that the father, Charles Roberts, had an affair, and Vivian discovered it. Unwilling to break the illusion of the ideal nuclear family, they refused to directly confront it. Instead, they let it strain their marriage for years, all while attempting to wipe away the evidence. But doing so had unintended consequences, which come back to haunt them years later. In each case, the actions of the few doom the many, but the many are complicit in the actions of the few. In the epilogue for the Painscreek Killings, a character mourns how everything was preventable. The deaths only happened because several people, independently, all made bad decisions. If a single one had chosen otherwise, maybe there wouldn't have been so much bloodshed. But no one makes their decisions in a vacuum. Just as the wealth of the Roberts family influenced the actions of the people around them, the hierarchy of the Obra Dinn influenced the crew. The initial spark might have been caused by a splinter group, but the decisions of the captain made everything worse. Without competent leadership, nor a say in the proceedings, the crew turned on each other, adding fuel to the fire. Each setting relied on certain rules and certain people to hold things together, and when they broke, the world broke. Both games make the same interesting pacing decision. In most mysteries, the reveal of the culprit takes place near the very end, and the denouement is relatively short. In both Return of the Obra Dinn and the Painscreek Killings, they reveal the culprit, and then they just keep going. In Obra Dinn, most of the truth is revealed in the second to last chapter, but the final chapter is hidden until you solve all deaths. Unless you're a genius, you'll be doing a lot of backtracking from here, filling in blank answers. In the Painscreek Killings, once you completely understand the motive for the crime, it's easy to guess the culprit, well before the game confirms it. But if you want to get the true ending, you still have plenty of work to do. Unlocking the last doors, filling in the last details, and reading the last goodbyes. They give us contemplation time. After racking our brains on the who, what, when, and where, they leave us time to reflect on the why. At least in a more modern Christian context, the religious apocalypse narrative is partially an attempt to make sense of suffering. Why do bad things happen when there's a loving God watching over us? The object of this literature in general was to solve the difficulties connected with the righteousness of God and the suffering condition of his righteous servants on earth. Though the individual might perish amid the disorders of the world, he would not fail, Apocalyptic taught, to attain, through resurrection, the recompense that was his due in the Messianic kingdom or in heaven itself. Apocalyptic thus forms the indispensable preparation for the religion of the New Testament. The world is broken, but this suffering is a necessary prelude to it being fixed. Everything will work out in the end. The mystery can be seen as a secularized attempt at answering the same question. Why do bad things happen, especially with the knowledge we have? Thus, people looked into the world of fiction to understand how crime will be fixed. Detective fiction was that drug. Characters like Dupont were transformed into band-aids of society by the reading public. When Sherlock Holmes came into being in A Study in Scarlet in 1887, the sociological role of the traditional great detectives expanded and showed how sometimes smart, good citizens uninterested in human beings could take part in policing the country. They are the ultimate objective man, the scientist. It calmed many people down because everything was going to be solved. All of society's problems, especially crime, were going to disappear. The world is broken, but if we find the culprit and bring them to justice, maybe it can be fixed. Everything will work out in the end. But both narratives are insufficient. The rapture is always sometime tomorrow, never today. The detective knows that the next case is always around the corner. Neither faith nor reason are enough to fix the world. It's fitting that, in both games, neither of the detectives are actually from law enforcement. Both Janet and the insurance adjuster have jobs that give them the impetus to investigate, but neither of them are looking for justice. Whether it be finding the story or balancing the books, both of them are working for the sake of closure. Not all closure is good, of course. At the end of Obra Dinn, you read the paperwork for your investigation. You watch the company turn tragedy to numbers, tallying up costs. They even find the households of the people who attempted to escape the ship going through hell, including the non-affiliated passengers. The evil on the Obra Dinn ended, but the evils of the British Empire lived on. But while the Obra Dinn story was doomed to languish in bureaucracy, Janet's story was published. Everyone who could benefit from the truth were either dead or long gone, but at the very least, someone could learn something from it. Before we wrap up, I want to give a couple shoutouts to upcoming games that fit this theme. While I can't vouch for their quality, I can vouch for my interest. The first is Kaizen Gameworks' Paradise Killer, an open-world murder mystery. Paradise is an island made of psychic energy that exists outside of reality. Every millennia, the Council destroys and remakes Paradise, attempting to resurrect their dead alien gods. On the eve of the 25th iteration, Perfect 25, the entire Council is slaughtered. You freely explore Paradise, picking up evidence in any order, and must piece together the truth for yourself before the island is destroyed. The second is Lucifer Within Us by Kit Fox Games. Taking place in a world of demonic possession and invasive soul-scanning technology, you play as a digital exorcist, solving mysteries and searching for demonic AI who corrupt their hosts. You investigate by collecting evidence and seeing into alternate timelines. In-game, it's presented as recreating people's testimony in physical space and pointing out where their timelines contradict. They're both mystery games with broken worlds, ruled by morally dubious authorities. You play as investigators who are the last line of defense against literal demonic corruption, which is presented as the inevitable outcome of a flawed system, and I'm extremely excited for both of them. So, what do you all think? Any criticisms or additions? Are you interested in trying any of the games I showed off here? Do you know of any other mystery stories or games that fit with this apocalyptic theme? Tell us in the comments below. I'm drowning in a sea of content, and I'll only get a life preserver if you like and subscribe. This is Else If Games, signing off.